you to the lightning class. We're going to talk about vision, on-track vision tonight, some basics and some tips. And hopefully you'll learn a few things you can apply when you get to lightning on Saturday and Sunday. So give me one more minute to get a couple of things set up here.
Quiet.
Since I'm working on my laptop, I have real estate than I normally do. So bear with me a moment. So I know some of you on tonight, probably this is your first event. I know others of you, it is not your first rodeo. So welcome to all of you. Before we dive into a few slides, let me just kind of ask anybody that wants to jump in, what you've been taught or what you've learned. I guess I should ask it that way, what you've learned about how far ahead do we want to look on track? What have you learned or been told? Feel free to jump in. Nobody's been told where to look on track? I can't believe that.
Well, you're going to look more than 2 seconds ahead, correct?
Yeah, say that again, Anthony.
You need to look more than 2 seconds ahead, correct?
More than 2 seconds ahead. Yes, absolutely. Yep. That's for sure. We're going to talk specifically about that later on, but sometimes you'll hear instructors talk about ocular driving. You're going to hear some figures of speech about where to look and all of that tonight. We're also going to talk about when we should look at flag stations, when we should look in the mirror. And if you're a new student, a brand new student, things like mirrors and flag stations and so on, your instructor will help you with, because if you're a brand new student, you're going to be very busy just trying to figure out the basics of where the track goes. And fortunately, your instructor can help you with some of those other issues. But if you're driving in yellow or blue, then flag stations and mirrors and so on, they're on you. They're not, your instructor should not have to be helping you with those. So now let me, point out, I'm going to cover a fair bit of material tonight. I'm going to go through it relatively quickly, but please, I want you to interrupt me if you have any questions or if something isn't clear, or you want me to say more about it. Please either jump in verbally, unmute yourself and jump in verbally, or raise your virtual hand. Either one of those, will work. So with that, let me see if I can get Zoom to share the screen here, and we'll get going. So, okay, let me get this out of the way here. I'm just arranging my screen so I can see at least some of you, while I can also see the slides. So, we're going to talk about vision. We have the normal disclaimer that says if you try any of this, and you screw up, it's your fault, not mine or NNJR's. Keep the lawyers happy. So here's what we're going to talk about tonight. Where do we want to look on track? How do we adapt our vision to driving on track? When do we look at things like flag stations and mirrors and such? And then I'm going to give you, if you're up for it, those of you that are up for it, some homework on how you can improve your vision on track. Pretty much the same material I covered with the advanced drivers on Monday. So, so with that, we'll dive right in. Where do we want to look when we're on track? Well, there's some classic advice, and that classic advice is still pretty good. We want to look pretty far ahead. And how far ahead is that? Well, Skip Barber used to teach, may still teach, 20 seconds. Now, when I first heard that from a Skip Barber instructor, I said, I've been on lots of tracks. I've never seen a track where I can see 20 seconds ahead. He said, yes, 20 seconds ahead. And so the notion is, we want to look as far ahead as possible. We'll say more in a minute about exactly what that means, but we want to get the eyes up. You may well hear your instructor say eyes up more than once. Look ahead of where you're going, and look where we want to go. The car goes where we look. That means, when we're approaching a corner, we're going to turn our head to look at the apex of the corner and eventually further around the corner. And at lightning, that's particularly important on the longer corners, the light bulb being an extreme example, but there's lots of others. Where we want to focus, again, this is classic advice. If we're approaching a brake zone, we're going to look at the brake markers, but as we get into the brake zone, we're going to look for the apex and pick up the brake markers out of our peripheral vision as we, same thing as we're approaching the corner, we pick up the turn-in point out of our peripheral vision and look at the apex and so on. Now, all that is based on what are called reference points, a fancy word for, where we want kind of the markers, the points on the track that we want to look at as references. So you really can't have too many reference points. So if you're a new student, you'll probably be happy to deal with turn in, apex, and track out. But if you have more experience, you should be looking for additional reference points that can give you assistance on track. And I find, and most people find, it really helps to write those down. Print out the track map for lightning, write down reference points when you come in for a run that work for you. And ideally, reference points that don't move. Which stripe on the apex, a tire mark, a pole, could be lots of things. And, you can even note things like elevation changes and so on. And I'll say more about mental picture as we go forward. But why do we use reference points? The simple answer is we want to be consistent. We want to be able to repeat our way through a corner, kind of hit your marks. If you hit the turn in, apex, and track out as a beginner, you're going to do just fine because you're going to get through the corner in a repeatable way. As you get a little more experience, your vision will help you know whether, when you're starting into a corner, whether it looks the way it did last time and the time before. And if it doesn't look the same, then alarm bells should go off. If it looks the same, then we can proceed as we should. And again, write these down on your track map. And over time, you're going to create this mental picture. And you can drive the track in your head. And I recommend you do that Saturday night as you're going to sleep. Drive yourself around the track in your head. Remember those reference points. Remember what the corners look like. That visualization is incredibly powerful. Ross Bentley is a huge proponent of that, but along with many others, and I can tell you it works. Of course, we want to look where we want to go. This is a famous picture. It's probably a little hard to see, but I think this is Jim Clark at Indianapolis years ago. The car is going sideways down the front straight. His head is turned 90 degrees, looking where he wants to go down the straightaway. An extreme example, but turn your head, look where you want to go. So those are the basics. Now let's talk about, what it means to drive on track. Well, these are notes from Dennis Mascio. If you were fortunate enough to hear him talk last December at our monthly meeting, you will have heard this. And if you want to hear him say it again, that's on our YouTube channel. But he pointed out that our eyes take about 7/10 of a second to see something. Our brain takes another 7/10 of a second to react if it's something unexpected, something new. So that says we got to look at least 2 seconds ahead. And that's kind of because he pointed out, we were genetically programmed, to walk and run 19 miles an hour, not 100 miles an hour. So our natural focus, our natural place to look, is 30 feet ahead. Well, obviously it doesn't work on track. And so our brain has to be reprogrammed, to work on track. Target fixation is an issue that's can be a problem on track if we're not careful, but it's more often a problem on the road. I'm not going to play the YouTube video here, but I encourage you to do that if you printed out the slide, or if you get the slides, the link works. These are slides from a state out west from the Highway Patrol, and all the cars that were hit on the side of the road by drivers looking at the car on the side of the road rather than looking at where they want to go. In other words, they're driving down a perfectly fine, open, dry highway and open 2 lanes in front of them. And instead of driving past these cars on the shoulder, they drive right into the cars on the shoulder. Why did they do that? Because target fixation. They went to where their eyes were looking. So that's a dramatic example, but if you get into an emergency situation on the track, you want to do what you saw Jim Clark do. You want to look to where you want to go. If the car is heading toward a wall, don't look at the wall. Look where we want to go. Now, hopefully none of you are going to be in that situation, but really important. So let's get really basic. How do we see a corner as we're approaching it? Well, the corner has requires at least 3 points, right? Basic geometry. But, as we approach the corner, we want our eyes to be able to see the whole corner, because when we do that, we now have confidence, or more confidence, in what we're going to do. The reference points, the turn in, the apex, and the track out reference points that you see on the left, if you just drove point to point, you drive 2 straight lines, right? If that were possible in the car. And as a beginner driver, that's kind of going to be your tendency to drive point to point. But as soon as you get any experience at all, you realize it's not point to point. There's a curve there. And that's what we see in our mental vision, in our head. And that's what we want to program ourselves to do and to see. Now, that's what we're focusing on, but we're picking up a lot of other things in our peripheral vision. It's part of what helps us with depth perception, but it's also a big part of being aware of what's going on track, with mirrors, with cars around us, flags, and so on. So, oops. So our mirrors are a big part of what's going on. Like I've said, we really not only need to be, we must be aware of the cars behind. Again, if you're a brand new student, your instructor is going to help you with that. But as you get more experience, you should never be surprised by a car in the mirror. Well, how do we do that? We have to scan the mirrors frequently, especially the rearview mirror. And I'm going to talk more about this later, about when we want to do that, to judge, how our car's gaining on us or not, and so on. But the first thing is to adjust the side mirrors so that you're taking maximum advantage of the mirrors themselves. Sit yourself in the proper seating position. And then I'm going to show you in the slides here how to adjust your mirrors so that you have little or no blind spot. And some of you have seen this before. I apologize, but I'm a broken record on adjusting the mirrors properly. So the rearview mirror gets adjusted just like you normally would. So you can see as much as possible behind the car, as far as possible behind the car. The left side mirror, tilt your head against the driver's window and adjust the mirror out until you can just see the back corner of the car, just barely. When you tip your head back into its normal position, when you look in that mirror, you'll see nothing. You won't see the side of your car at all. And we do the same thing on the right side, lean our head underneath the rearview mirror, push it out until we can just barely see the back corner of the car. What does that cause to happen? If you have your mirrors adjusted like most people do, you have a big blind spot, to the left side and the right side of the car. And by the way, these adjustments work great on the street, and they really are helpful on the track. If you adjust the mirrors the way I just described, now there is no blind spot, or if there is, it's very small. In my cars, I have the mirrors adjusted so that if a car is to my left, I will see them in the left side mirror until they're literally even with my shoulder. And they literally show up in my peripheral vision off my left shoulder or my right shoulder on the right side. So if you haven't done this, do it with all your cars. Now let's break down vision a little more carefully and talk about how our eyes and our brain work on the track and how we want to use them. Our focus is where we are looking at any given point in time. It's our central vision. It's where that 1 second plus that Dennis Mascio talked about, that's where we concentrate. That's the good news. The bad news is it's a very, very small zone, 3 degrees, maybe 5 degrees. If you hold your fist out in front of you at your arm's length and look at how big your fist is, that's roughly the size of your focus vision. So it's not very large, but that's where we're going to go. If we're focused there, that's where the car is going to go. Our peripheral vision is kind of everything else, around us, right? We can see 150, 160, 180 degrees and perceive all that, but not at the same level of detail and not with the same level of focus. Now, a glance uses that central vision, but just for a glance, just like it says, half a second or less. That's what we use for mirrors. That's what we use, to look far ahead. I'll give you an example of that in a moment. And so using that focus as a glance, we don't pick up as much detail. We're not going to drive to that point, but we are going to pick up if there's something in our mirror. We're going to pick up if there's something at a flag station that wasn't there before. We're going to see it with that glance. And then last but not least is mental. We've already talked about this. We have a mental picture, having been around the track before, of what it should look like. If it doesn't look like what it should look like, again, that gives us a warning sign. So here's a great slide to show you how all of that applies approaching a right-hand corner. This isn't turn 1 at Lightning, but turn 1 at Lightning's a 90-degree right-hand corner. So where is our focus? It's at the apex. We're approaching the corner. We're in the braking zone. Just to orient everyone, we're in the braking zone for this corner. And our focus is that small purple or pink dot in the middle, which is the apex of the corner. Our peripheral vision is going to pick up the turn-in point. Okay, we're not focused on that. We know where it is because we can see it out of our peripheral vision. We know when to turn because our peripheral vision will tell us. At the same time, we can glance ahead to track out. That's where we eventually want to go. So we want to have glanced over there in case, God forbid, there's something wrong or something on the track or who knows what, but also telling us where we want to go. And our mental vision, our mind's eye, has this orange path, through the corner. So this is kind of the way we want our eyes to work on the track. We want to be focused on maybe, 1.5 or 2 reference points ahead. We want to pick up the nearby reference points out of our peripheral vision. And we want to use the glance to, in this case, look ahead. And in other situations, to look in the mirror. Now, we're in the braking zone for a corner. There's no passing, so there's no reason to look in the mirror in this situation, right? But there are other situations where you want to use that glance in the mirror. So let's, if we think about that, let's just do a quick poll, if I can get Zoom to react for me here. I'm going to see if I can get this to work. Okay. All right. Why is it not giving me the poll? Here we go. Okay. So I just put up a Zoom poll. So where do we want to focus? Remember focus from that previous slide. If we're at the apex or approaching the apex, where do we want to focus? When we're on track. So I'll give everybody another, 5 or 10 seconds to, click your favorite answer and then hit submit. Okay. All right. So lots of votes for track out, lots of votes for down the straight, some votes for wide open throttle. All right, so I'm going to end that. I'm going to share the results. So this is a bit of a trick question, but not really. Track out is a perfectly fine answer to this question. But really, we want to be looking further ahead down the straight, because we're at the apex. In most cases, track out is already pretty well picked up in our peripheral vision. And we want to be looking as to where we want to go next. So a bit of a trick question. The wide open throttle point, whoever answered that's probably not a beginner, but that is not where our focus should be. That again should be picked up in our peripheral vision. Again, it's about getting our eyes further down the road, focus where we want the car to go, right? Okay. So when do we want to look? So when do we want to look at flag stations? When do we want to look at mirrors? Let's talk about that. Obviously, flag stations are critical for everybody. There's no excuse for missing a flag, but drivers miss flags all the time. Why does that happen? And if you're a beginner and miss a flag, that's perfectly fine. But if you're driving in yellow, blue, or God forbid any group above that and missing a flag, then you're not driving as well as you could and should on track. Inexperienced drivers miss flags because they're not glancing or scanning enough. And they may also not have a complete picture of what the where the flag stations are and what they should look like. Because you should know in your glance or your scan where the flag station is. And if you come around a corner or the flag station comes into view and all of a sudden it's different than it was the last time, again, that mental picture being different should send off an alarm bell. Experienced drivers miss flags because they get into a tunnel vision mode. They can have an incomplete mental picture. They can also just get lazy and get in a rut. So here's a real example. Let's talk about lightning turn 5. Here we are, we've just turned in for turn 5 everybody can see the flag station on the right here, right? It's right there. So we can easily see that flag station. But the question is, can we see it sooner? Well, here we are exiting turn 4. Guess what? We can see the flag station. It's almost right in front of us. We're at this point, our focus is on the turn in for, curbing for turn 5. This is just a very small glance to look at this flag station. How about sooner? How about at the apex of turn 4? We're looking at track out and heading down track, but the flag station's right there. Again, it's dead in front of us. We can see it a long ways away. How about even earlier? How about in turn 3? It's a little bit now off to our left, but if that flagger were waving a yellow flag, most of us ought to be able to pick that up. So flag stations need to be picked up early. This is a good example. Not every flag station can be seen that quickly, or that early, I should say, but many can. Now, let's talk about turn 10, which is the light bulb, the big, sweeping turn at the end of the lap. As we exit, here we are past the apex of the light bulb, and there's a flag station ahead of us. There's actually 2 of them along the left side of the track here. And clearly, we can obviously see them at this point. They're right in front of us. Now, this is kind of the braking zone, getting ready to turn in for turn 10. Can we see the flag stations? Well, the camera's view is not wide enough to get around to see them from this point. But in fact, if we were to turn our head and glance ahead, we could probably see that flag station. Maybe even earlier. This is in the straightaway before we ever, on our way to turn 10. Those flag stations are straight across the grass from us at this point. If we were really clever, we could turn our head briefly and glance over and see if there's anything going on at those flag stations. So this is a pretty extreme example. I'll grant you that, because it's the camera doesn't even come close, to giving us a sense of where it is. But I'm trying to make the point, we want to look for flag stations as quickly as we can. So that's flag stations. So, how about looking in the mirrors? When do we want to look in the mirrors? And let me see if I can find the polls again. See if they disappeared on me here. Okay, where? Okay, let me get to the. Okay, there we go. So another poll, when this is a multiple choice. So when do you want to be looking in your mirrors? Entering a corner, middle of a corner, exiting a corner, middle of a straightaway, entering a braking zone. And like I said, this multiple choice, there's several right answers here. This is not a trick question. It's just one to help us all understand what the possibilities are that can actually work. Okay, another 5 or 10 seconds, about half. Now we got more people going. Good. 5 more seconds. Almost everybody's in. Okay, good. All right, so when do you look in your mirrors? Well, I'll just go down the list here. Entering a corner. Well, it's not a terrible time to know who's behind you, but nobody's going to pass you in the corner. So entering a corner is not critical. And if glancing in your mirror at that point is going to cause you to be distracted at all, then don't bother. Same applies in the middle of a corner. If you can glance back there and see what's going on, fine, but no need to do that. The next three, however, all do apply. Exiting a corner, that's the standard advice that we all get. When you exit a corner, if there's a car behind, presuming there's a passing zone coming up, then give a pass signal. So sure, exiting a corner, we want to look in the mirrors. Middle of a straightaway, same reason. Your car may have caught up to us in the middle of a straightaway. We definitely want to know that and give them a pass, assuming they're doing it. How about entering a braking zone at the end of a straightaway? Well, nobody's going to pass us at that moment, but that is a correct answer and an important answer, because that gives us a benchmark as to how many cars are back there, how far behind us are they, and so on. So that when we do get to the next passing zone, we know there's nobody close to us, or we know, hey, there's two cars behind, and we should be looking for when they're going to gain on us. Or it may give you a sense of, yeah, there's cars back there, but they're not gaining on us. So we won't be giving a pass signal anytime soon. So three important answers here, and the top two only if you're really ready to do that. Okay. All right. So let me get past that. All right. So I'm about to wrap up with this portion. Can we improve our on-track vision by practice? Yes. There's lots of ways to do it. I think I've listed 4 or 5 here. There are things you can practice on the street, looking ahead at least 5 seconds and figuring out what 20 seconds looks like. In city traffic, a block is like 15 seconds. On the highway, a quarter of a mile is 15 to 20 seconds, depending on your speed. You can pay attention to focus versus glance versus peripheral. What can you see? You can adjust your mirrors properly. We can visualize, we can work on that mental picture. There's something called deliberate practice, which is focusing on the track. There are deliberate practice worksheets on the website, and also at the end of this of the slides for tonight's presentation. There's some exercises, and there's some things to be aware of. Now, all of that you can do for extra credit. It's in the appendix, like I said. And if you look at that, any of those, you have questions, you can email me or you can ask your instructor. The alarm bells part, how can your vision get worse? Well, you can lose focus. Here I don't mean vision focus. I mean, you can get tired from pressure. You can get distracted. Any of those things, will detract from what we can do on track. And in particular, things like pressure or being tired, they narrow our field of view. So we don't see as much and we react more slowly. So very dangerous things if you're on track to not be, in tip-top mental shape, to focus. Okay, so my summary, look far ahead, look where you want to go, adjust the mirrors, use reference points, think about adapting to track driving, which means you have to reprogram. Think about the focus, glance, peripheral, and mental vision. So some, more than basics probably here, but hopefully something that's useful for everyone. Oh, and obviously look for the flags and the flag stations early. I don't know why that didn't pop up. And as I said, there's the extra credit slides at the end here. So Zoom is not helping me here. Okay, let me pause here. Questions, comments, and we'll take a few minutes and do a turn by turn for lightning in a second. But I've been talking a long time, so I'm going to take a breath and let you ask any questions or clarifications that you have. No need to be shy.
I had a quick question here.
Sure, Kyle, go ahead.
So it seems like we're gonna run into some rain this weekend. Anything like look?
Kyle, you're breaking up, so I only got about a third of that. I'm sorry, Kyle, but I did not get the question, so my apologies.
I think he was asking a question about rain and track conditions and what do you do if it rains?
Okay, what do we do if it rains? Okay, great question, given forecast says we could have some showers. Well, the events are rain or shine, so we run in the rain unless it's a real monsoon. And if your car has good street tires on it, then driving in the rain is good experience as a student. Yes, the windows will be down, so you may get a little bit of water inside the car, but other than that, it's good experience. In general, what driving in the rain teaches is how, let me say it differently. It highlights how sensitive the car is to the controls, because the car is much more sensitive to steering, brakes, gas in the wet than it is in the dry. And so that's why it's such a good learning experience, because you get a much better seat of the pants feel for what the car is doing and at a lower speed on track. So yeah, in some cases there may be an adjustment to the line. Although lightning, I think there's not too much of that that you would typically have to worry about as a student. But it's much more a matter of getting used to what the car feels like when it's sensitive, which will help you eventually in the dry. Is I guess the briefest way I can answer that question. Okay. Anybody else? The only bad question is the one you don't ask. So anybody that has a question, just ask it. And I'm going to find my turn by turn slides here. Well, oops, that's not what we want. Wrong one. Pick the wrong one. Here we go. Oh, come on. Away. No, I see what's happening. Give me a second. It's hiding the slides behind Zoom, so I can't see them. Yes, I have them memorized, but I need to know which slide we're on. So, okay. All right. So I should have asked earlier how many people were new to Lightning, but we'll go around the track here, and please, this is a good place as we go around the track to ask questions as we go. So if you have a question on turn one, when we're on turn one, please ask it then, and we'll get to it. So passing zones at Lightning, the front straight, which is up here, passing is on the right. Between turns 1 and 2, passing is on the right. Mandatory right side passing, that's the natural place to pass. No passing between turns 2, 3, 4, and 5. Passing between 5 and 7, generally on the left for students. Yes, you can give a pass signal on the right in the very early part of that stretch, but most students find that difficult. So most passing is going to be on the left here. Between 7 and 9, there can be passing on either side, initially on the left and then later on the right. Yeah, Kyle, you had a question.
Yeah, so quick question on the passing, right? So for example, turn 1, how late, well, which point should we just bail out and passing is too late? If I keep going, it might just slide into the grass or collect another car. How late would you say you should just wave it off, call it a day, try again next corner?
I'm glad you asked that question because not enough people think about it that way. It really is important to not take a late pass, even if you get a pass signal, wave it off, like you said. So the answer is, if you get a pass signal after the front straight flag station in a student group, that's too late. Just wave it off because the braking zone comes up pretty quickly right after that. And there's plenty of time to pass. You can give, and by the way, if you're a driver who has given a pass signal and somebody waves it off because they're approaching a braking zone, that doesn't mean they don't get a pass signal the next opportunity. So in your example, Kyle, if you waved off a pass because you got given a pass at the flag station or at the beginning of the braking zone at turn 1, that driver should give you a pass right after turn 1, between turns 1 and 2. And that is the protocol, that's the courtesy that we expect on track. And your instructor should help you with that, but not too many people don't wave off passes and take a late pass and they end up, in over their head, and there's no reason for that. Plenty of time to take a pass.
Hey, Bill, I have a question for you with regards to the signals. Is there a standard signal for passing on the left, passing on the right, waving off a pass? Like what exists?
Yeah.
Is it very common or people use different things?
No. Well, if I understood your question, Ron, there are standard pass signals. We will cover those in the driver's meeting, but they look like this. It's over the roof of the car with, for a right-hand pass. Okay. Just like I'm trying to show, only I don't have a car and a roof here, but you're reaching as hard as high and far over the roof of the car, for a right side pass, and for a left side pass, it's straight with the arm straight out the window to your left. And those are the only acceptable pass signals. And your instructor will help you with that. We'll mention in the novice meetings and so on. And now there's a second part to your question that I'm not sure I got all of.
So you were talking about waving off a pass, meaning I'm the one that wants the pass, but it's too far down the track.
Yep.
So how do I don't know, how do you see that, or how do I wave it off? And what do you do?
That's a great question. So I have a slide someplace that shows that, and I didn't think to put it in tonight, but here's how that works. If you're behind a car and they've given you a pass signal, if you want to decline that pass, you stay behind them so that you're right in their rearview mirror and you do this. Okay. You wave your hand across the windshield so that they can easily see it right in their rearview mirror, and they know that you've just declined the pass signal. Okay. It's a nice visible thing to do, just like that. Okay. So yes, you'll discover that there are a lot of standard protocols and such on track, and we just covered, some of them with the pass signals and the wave offs. Yep. Okay.
But will the novices be passing? This will be our first time on the track.
No, novices will be passing. If you're in the green run group, if I'm doing the novice meeting at Lightning, you'll hear me say this again, but I'll say it here. Drivers new to the track are expecting to have to learn to drive the line and, go fast and hit the brakes and do all that kind of stuff. What you're not expecting probably is dealing with traffic. cars in front of you, cars behind you. So yes, in the green run group, you will be dealing with passing, both taking passes and giving passes. Now, your instructor is going to, do a lot of the heavy lifting initially for you so that, you don't have to be too concerned about looking in your mirrors and some of that kind of thing. But yes, you will be dealing with traffic.
Instructors will be getting, like, it's very important to hit your braking point and hit the apex. So they'll be teaching us, they'll have that at the driver's meeting.
Absolutely. Well, we'll cover a little bit of that in the driver's meeting, but the learning the line and such, your instructor will work with you one-on-one on that. And so your instructor is going to drive the first 2 laps or more, if you prefer, in your first session. They're going to show you the line, show you where to position the car on the track, drive it at a pace that would be approximately accurate for you to drive at. And then you're going to switch seats and you're going to drive and learn the line and the braking points and all the rest.
We should mimic that pace, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. You don't want to try to exceed that pace. You just want to do what he shows you to do with the car, correct?
Correct. And what I tell my students is drive at the pace you're comfortable with. If you're going too fast, I'm going to tell you it's too fast and tell you to slow down. If you're going too slow, there is no such thing as too slow. We all learn at our own pace. Some of us go slower, some of us go faster, but you're far better off driving at a comfortable pace, learning the line, learning the rhythm of the track, and then picking up the pace. That's how, if a person starts trying to go too quickly, they're not going to learn as fast, because remember, I talked about consistency before. It's all about becoming consistent. And if you're trying too hard or trying to go too fast, it becomes very difficult to be consistent.
Hey, Bill, is that, I read something too in the driver's manual about same with gears, right? With shifting, try not to shift too much. So, and I think they said you should be able to, use third or fourth. And again, I guess to keep the complexity down while we're learning.
Yeah, I'm just making an adjustment here. Give me 1 second. So, Paul, absolutely. If you have a manual shift car, or even a PDK for that matter, you're much better off running initially in 1 or 2 gears, not worrying about shifting, because you're going to be plenty busy in the first time you're on track. And the last thing you need to worry about is a lot of shifting. So most modern cars will be happy to run around lightning in 3rd gear or 4th gear and not have to worry about shifting. You can pick that part up later. Initially, we want to focus on learning the line, getting consistent on the braking points and the turn in and so on, and getting comfortable with the pace of the traffic and all the rest. Later, as you go a little bit faster, then you can add in, shifting gears and all that. But yes, that's a good piece of advice, and I'm glad you mentioned it.
Good.
Other questions or comments?
Along the same lines, Bill, my car has different settings on it. It has a Sport Plus, has PDK. What do the instructors usually instruct you to leave it in or not leave it in, and you use the manual gear shift?
Well, definitely not Sport Plus, because the car will run right to the red line and be pretty aggressive, and that's the last thing you need. Most instructors are going to tell you just to leave it in the normal street mode, for your first day on track. Maybe the second day you can put it in Sport, but there's, Sport Plus in particular is so aggressive that even some intermediate drivers, get flummoxed by it because of the, it's almost too smart for its own good until you're really a skilled driver. Okay. And the reason is it's running right to the red line, and doing bang, bang shifts, right? Yeah, you don't need to run right to the red line to learn the line around the track. Yeah, right.
Great.
Okay, good. Okay, anybody else?
I don't know if anyone has a question if the train happens.
A train of cars on track?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, for example, if I'm the leading train, I'm the head of the train, do I just keep giving passes until everybody's gone by, or do I just one pass and then another one later and then another one later so I can get the train disappear a little quicker?
Well, Kyle, your instructor is going to help you with that. But if there's several cars behind, yes, you want to give one signal for each car and get them past. And on the front straight, there's room to send several cars around. And the other passing zones between 1 and 2, probably only 1 or at most 2 cars. In the back straight, between 6 and 7, you can get a couple cars past. But your instructor, like I said, is going to help you with that. Yes, you want to get them past so that you can concentrate on driving. At the same time, don't slow yourself down so much that everybody in the group catches you either. So there's sort of a balancing act in terms of how that works. But again, if there's a really long line, your instructor may just ask you to drive through the pits on one lap, pull into the pits, roll through, go right back out on track. And that way, if there were a lot of cars behind, they would now be in front of you. You wouldn't have to worry about sending them around. So those things do happen, but they're not necessarily common. And the first run or two on Saturday, there will be a lot of cars and there may be some trains and whatever, but they typically sort themselves out after 2 or 3 runs and people get comfortable on track. So I wouldn't spend much time worrying about that kind of thing. Okay. All right. So lightning. There is a video of the lap on the website. So turn 1 at lightning is, not quite 90-degree right-hander. The overhead view here doesn't show you that there's a hill right here. So the challenge with turn 1 is that, the track out point is blind. We can't see the track out. So we turn in a little bit after the 1 brake marker, it's uphill. So the car turns in nicely. We don't have to brake quite as much as we might think because the hill helps the car slow down. But we need to get the turning done early so the car is straight going over the hill. And we have to be delicate with the gas pedal because the car is going to get light going over the hill. So we're going to go over the hill about 3/4 of the way track left and not get on the gas hard until the car comes over the hill. Car comes up, goes over the hill, settles down. Now we can apply the power. And it's easy to get into this too fast or too early. And the comment here is, if that happens, just drive off track left, off to the outside. There's acres and acres of grass to the left of the track here. And this applies in every corner, but turn 1 is particularly tricky because of the hill. And it's always the case that if you get into a corner too fast, or you're not comfortable, or the car doesn't feel right, you're far better off to drive the car off to the outside, in this case to the left, into the grass, and then slow down, and then the flaggers will direct you back on track. Nobody's going to criticize you for doing that. The alternative is if you get into a corner too fast, like turn 1 or any other one, and you're not sure you're going to make it. If instead of driving it off, you try to keep the car on track, what happens? The car spins and hits the tire wall that's on the inside of turn 1 or any other inside. So if the car wants to go off the track, let it go off the track. And, worst case, you'll collect some grass and dirt in the car. But your instructor will be happy about that. The chief instructors will be happy about that, because you made the right decision to drive off. If you ever notice pros when they race, they'll drop a wheel in the dirt or kick up dirt, or even sometimes put two wheels off the outside of the track, or even drive off. They very seldom spin and hit something on the inside, at least if in dry conditions. That's what happens with inexperienced drivers. Fortunately, not usually with novices, because you're not making those kinds of mistakes. But turn one's a good place to make that point. Whoops, went one slide too far. So as we approach turn one, we're in the braking zone here, and you can see the hill up ahead, and you can see how the track rises at the end of the braking zone, and at about where we're turning in. Here we've turned in, and you can see the apex cone, which is clear on the inside of the grass here, but the apex is pretty much the end of this, red and white striped curbing on the inside. And so that's where we're aiming. Here we are now, past the apex. Car is pretty well straight, not quite all the way track left, maybe a car width in from the left side of the track. And notice what we can see ahead. Nothing, right? We can't see anything because of the hill. The only thing we can see, by the way, is the flagger on the right here. So that flagger is the reason we can go over this hill with confidence that there's nothing that's going to be a problem as we go over the hill. So as we do go over the hill, now we see where track out is, the curbing on the left. And you notice lots of people have dropped wheels in the dirt there. And those aren't novices. Those are people being a little too ambitious, or people who are racing or whatever. But the track out curbing is, over the hill as you see here.
Hey, Bill, to the right, is that the coming out of the pits? Is that where you enter the track?
Absolutely is, Paul, and I'm glad you mentioned that. That is the entrance to the track. And so when you enter the track, well, let me say it differently. As you can see by where the camera car is here, the line is track left coming over the hill. As we enter the track, we enter track right, and we are obliged to stay all the way to the right side of the track, all the way to the apex of the following corner, track turn two. That way, as cars come over the hill going much faster than we're going, because we just came out of the pits, we give them a pass signal. They can go around us on the left, and it's no problem. But yes, it is, from a safety perspective or a design perspective, I could quibble that this is not a great design, but it is what we're left with. And so the solution is be very mindful if you are entering the track, or if you're on track and someone's entering, both cars have to, pay a lot of attention.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
But yes, that is the entrance to the track. Yep. So the next complex is a challenge for newer drivers, or often is, because turns 2, 3, and 4 are connected, and they come up very quickly. It's like bang, bang, bang. There's not much space in between these corners. And that's the bad news. The good news is they have a nice rhythm, and it's not driven properly. It's only 2 corners, not 3. So here is turn 2. And unlike every other corner on the track, your instructor is probably going to tell you here not to get all the way into the apex cone, where the A is on the slide. We want to make a big arc through turn 2 that continues into turn 3. So that turns 2 and 3 end up being one big sweeping arc. And to do that, we need the apex of turn 2 to be roughly 4 feet in from from the curbing. So our objective here is we're basically trying to lengthen that straightaway between turns 1 and 2 and carry as much speed as we can, into 2 and 3. And part of that arc is that the track out for turn 2 is really the turn in for turn 3. Again, part of one big arc. And so here's what it looks like as we approach turn 2. You see the cone on the left, that's a turn in cone. Here is the apex curbing, and the camera car is not positioned quite right here. It should have been a little bit more to the left of the curb to be the full 4 feet off. Here's turn 3, which is a continuation. So where you see the turn in arrow for 3, that's exactly where we ended up coming out of turn 2. It's a continuation of that arc. The apex, for turn 3 is the early part of this curbing. And we're just aiming to be kind of the middle of the track as we come out of turn 3, because we're immediately going to go into turn 4. So here's approaching turn 3. Here is that apex of turn 3, and turn 4 is just ahead of us here. And so turn 4 looks like this. Now, we did a big sweeping right-hand arc through 2 and 3. Now we've got to turn the car left, into turn 4. And, most people don't need to brake here. Maybe, a little lift or something, but you can also tap the brakes if you need to do that. And again, your instructor is going to help you with that. But we're going to get into the apex, pretty standard left-hand corner here. And there are 2 options here. I'm not going to go into this in any detail. If you get through 2 and 3 really fast, you're going to have trouble staying on the right-hand half of the track. You'll end up closer to the apex of turn 4. That's perfectly fine. If you're in the right-hand half of the track, that's fine too. Some cars require a tap of the brakes to help them turn. Other cars don't. But there is good grip at the apex, and we want to use all of the track out coming out of 4. So here we are. We've just exited turn 3. We've just finished that big right-hand arc, and now we're getting ready to turn left. And now we're at the apex of 4. We've made the left-hand turn, and we're exiting 4, and we have a short straightaway, up to turn 5. So if that sounds like a lot's going on, it is. And I don't want to scare anybody, because it's not scary at all. It's just, a challenging complex. And one of the things that makes lightning unique, and that many people really find to be one of the signature features that they really like once they, kind of understand how it works. So any comments or questions there before I move us ahead to 5? If you're a new driver, this sounds like way too much, I know, and I apologize for that. I don't want to make it sound harder than it is, because your instructor is going to walk you through all of this, or talk you through all of this. Turn 5 is a second corner where we're dealing with a hill, only this time, well, turn 1, the track out is over the hill. In this case, the apex is over the hill. So we have to turn in and aim for an apex that we can't see. And because, again, the overhead here doesn't show us, the hill. The turn in, I'll show you in the photo, is on that curb on the left. We want to get the car straight going up the hill, so we go straight over the hill. We want to be careful with the power, just like in turn 1, and we want to use all the track out as we exit. So approaching turn 5, notice the red and white curbing on the left. The last red stripe there is the turn-in point. We want the car lined up with that curbing and then turn in, near the end of it. And once we turn in, we're looking up the hill. We're now kind of straight looking up the hill. We can't see the apex, right? No sign of an apex cone. And because, it's not there, it's out of sight. We have to go top of the hill before we can see the apex cone. And it's a little hard to see here, but it's at kind of late in that curbing. And this is one case where, maybe the only case where I'll have my students drive right on the apex curbing, to get all the way in. It's nice and flat and straightens the corner out a little bit. Track out is way down. The track, it's off to track left. And the straightaway that follows here is really got a turn in it, turn 6, which is flat out for everybody, but it is a turn, even though it doesn't, well, it's labeled the turn, even though we don't have to treat it like one. At the end of that long stretch is turn 7, which is a left-hand 90-degree corner, like you can see here. No hill to get in the way here, but the braking zone is downhill, and so we need to brake, fairly early, and it's a fairly slow corner, so we have to treat it, like a slow corner. So it's slow in, fast out. You may hear that term. It's easy to wait too long to brake here. And it's also easy to, the apex is early and the turn in is relatively early as well. So what does it look like? As we approach it, here's the bridge. Your instructor is going to have you braking, before the bridge. I would imagine, certainly at the bridge at the latest. For whatever reason, the brake markers don't exist until after the bridge. I don't know anybody that can wait until after the bridge to brake here, unless you have a 50 horsepower car or something. But it kind of pulls you in. But the braking zone after the bridge, right side of the track. The turn in is at the end of the curbing. The cone is there, whether you can see it or not with the contrast. The apex is the early part of the curb here. And so this is a corner where we get the cornering done as early as possible, get the turning done as early as possible, so we can straighten it out and head down the fairly long stretch that follows it here. Okay. Now, the other, if you will, signature part of lightning is the light bulb or the bowl or whatever name one wants to use. There are two different lines here. I'm only going to explain one of them because I think it's easier to learn. And what I do want you to take away from this overhead shot is, look how sharp, what's the right word? How long that corner is. It's more than 180 degrees, right? Now it's huge, but it's still over 180 degrees. So we're going to be turning a very long time, in this kind of a corner. Notice the turn in is like a month before the apex here. And so that causes new drivers to think they need to, head toward the apex way too soon. We have to be patient here. So there's, those are the two lines. I'm not going to spend any time there. As we approach the light bulb, I want you to notice two things. First, notice this gap in the wall ahead of us. It's a great reference point to focus on from a distance because we want to drive right to that point. And the other thing we want to pay attention to is this white line that's along the right side of the track that is straight. And that's our braking zone for, and this corner requires less brake than you might think because it's heavily banked. And so we brake lightly toss the car up into the banking about halfway up, turn it, and then we wait and look for the apex. And speaking of the apex, it is a very, very long ways around. And the camera isn't wide enough here to show us, off to the right where the apex is. Here I've gone far enough around so you can see, but your instructor may point out on the inside of the Armco here is a concrete culvert or drain. And you can see that from a long ways away over from where we turn in. If you get your eyes around, remember I said you need to turn your head, look far ahead, focus ahead. If we turn our head and pick up that culvert, that gives our eyes something to focus on and gives our hands a target to slowly wind the car down toward the apex. Now, I guess I don't have a picture at the actual apex here, but again, it's a long ways around, and this is the track out. The other thing I'll point out here is that when you do enter the front straight coming out of the light bulb, the track curves a little bit. So there's a hill here, and this is a passing zone, but the track comes back a little bit. So if you give a pass on the right, you have to be very careful to not run out of track going over the hill here. Again, your instructor is going to help you with that. And the entrance to the pits is also on the right side of the track after you go over the hill. So it's a busy section as we enter the front straight. Again, not the way I would have designed it if I'd have designed it. So a couple of quick reminders, drive off if you have trouble, focus on 1, 5, and 7, and the other things we talked about. So probably too much for those of you who are beginners, but those of you that have been there, have some reminders, I think, to think about. But questions, comments on what we've talked about or anything we didn't talk about that you'd like to know more about? And I apologize for the, yeah, go ahead, Kyle.
So if I remember correctly, after turn 7, after the bridge, there's a slight uphill and then downhill going to the bulb. I don't know if I'm mentioning it right, but sometimes I personally feel like when I'm shooting it down towards the bulb, I feel like I'm gonna run out of track very close to the left while I'm giving a pass. So I don't know if I should squeeze a little bit to the right. I feel like I'm always running out of track on the left.
Well, if you feel like you're running out of track, maybe you're giving the pass later than you should. There's no reason to give. Yes, you can give a pass on the right there, but you don't have to give a pass, so late that it, squeezes you getting into the bowl. Now that said, it's very wide there. There's a lot of room, and the banking's there to help. So, you have to give the car room to get past, but you don't have to push yourself off the edge either. So, generally, that section is pretty safe. So, my advice earlier applies. Don't take a pass signal late. Don't give a pass signal late if it's not comfortable. Other comments, questions? Well, I apologize for the late start and keeping you all later than I might have liked, but I'm sure you want it. But we will see all of you on Saturday at Lightning, and regardless of whatever the weather does, I'm sure we'll have a great event. If you're like me, you're anxious to get back to the track at the beginning of the season. So thanks for attending tonight. I appreciate it. Everyone have a great evening, and we'll see you very soon.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you very much.
See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Bill. See you Saturday.
Thanks, guys.
Yes.